death in France. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today's Thursday, the 23rd of February 2023. I'm Jason Davis. Nationally, officials from the Ministry of National Security, other government representatives, and other departments of the National Security Forces are expected to be in attendance this afternoon for the installation of the new Commissioner of Police. James Sutton will be installed as the new Commissioner of Police during a ceremony at Warner Park. Mr. Sutton succeeds Hilroy Brandy, who has held the position for several years. ZIZ will be bringing live coverage of the ceremony on our various media platforms. Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Marsha Henderson, announced that St. Kitts has been integrated into the current itinerary of Inter-Caribbean Airways in an effort to strengthen the interconnectivity with neighboring Caribbean islands. This was revealed during an address to the nation, where Minister Henderson stated that service out of the Grantley Adams International Airport in Barbados will begin on Sunday, the 12th of March.
To remediate the interregional situation, the St. Kitts Tourism Authority has negotiated with Inter-Caribbean Airways to initiate service from Barbados and Puerto Rico into St. Kitts, affording travelers same-day travel options with one-stop service to the wider Caribbean. Service out of the Grantley Adams International Airport, Barbados, is scheduled to commence on Sunday, 12th March 2023, with the service to Puerto Rico being announced shortly thereafter.
The minister also outlined the schedule of the airline and the destinations available.
An Embraer 120 aircraft with a seating capacity of 30 will service St. Kitts from Barbados 3 times weekly on Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, with one-stop connectivity via Barbados to the islands of Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Dominica, and Guyana.
To book a flight using Inter-Caribbean Airways, Minister Henderson said persons can do so at the airline's website at www.intercaribbean.com or contact a local travel advisor. Faith-based leaders in Nevis have given their full support to the Federal Ministry of Ecclesiastical and Faith-Based Affairs as it seeks to establish and stage the National Day of Prayer on February 28 as an annual initiative. The leaders held their first face-to-face engagement with Permanent Secretary Elrita Simpson-Brown on Tuesday, February 21, during a meeting at the Charlestown Wesleyan Holiness Church. The meeting came on the heels of a virtual discussion last week. With support from Pastor Clive Saunders, chairman of the Planning Committee for the National Day of Prayer, the participants were able to finalize activities to be staged in Nevis as part of the National Day of Prayer. Permanent Secretary Simpson-Brown said that the meeting was very fruitful as several activities were confirmed for the observance. These include scheduling prayer sessions in schools and churches, organizing a prayer walk, and hosting a special service at 7 p.m. at the Bath Road New Testament Church of God. The Permanent Secretary said that the leaders were very energetic and have encouraged closer collaboration between the government and faith-based community in the future to ensure that there are synergies between activities held in St. Kitts and in Nevis. Moving now to news on the regional scene. Guyana has been suspended from the Global Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative for failing to submit its 2020 report. Shimara Lane tells us why.
Guyana has been suspended from the Global Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative EITI for failing to submit its 2020 report. In fact, a visit to the EITI global website showed that Guyana was suspended for missing a deadline. In this regard, Nightly News attempted to contact Minister of Natural Resources Vikram Bharat, but calls went unanswered. As a result, a call was placed to the ministry's public relations officer, Michaela Prince, who noted that a statement would be released before the end of the day. She was tight-lipped on the release of any information. However, in an interview with Nightly News, former head of Guyana's EITI, Dr. Rudy Jagopat, said that the suspension affects the investment climate in the country.
One of the consequences of being not an EITI implementing country is the interest rate that investors would borrow to invest in Guyana will be lower if Guyana is an EITI implementing country. A lot of people don't know that. So let's say they want to borrow money from some international banks and so on, Exxon or whichever oil company, to come and invest in Guyana, to buy equipment and whatever in Guyana. Guyana is an EITI country, the interest rate is going to be lower than if Guyana wasn't an EITI country.
Dr. Jagopat explained that Guyana could submit its report to lift the suspension. However, he warned about the next step, which is expulsion. If this happens, Guyana will have to start over again. To this end, he noted he is ready to take up back the mantle. Let's say the government is to offer you to go back there. Is that something you're willing?
I'm here to serve my country and my people anytime. Anytime. All they have to do, call me, tell you that, you tell me and I go there.
EITI is a global standard that promotes the sustainable management of natural resources. It consists of requirements that governments and companies must adhere to become as EITI compliant. Since 2017, Guyana has managed to submit its reports under the stewardship of Dr. Rudy Jagopat. But last year, Dr. Jagopat's contract was not renewed by the Ali-led administration after allegedly being asked to violate one of the terms of reference by the subject minister. As a result, he was replaced with Dr. Prem Mazir, a move that saw the government coming in for heavy criticism owing to his close ties with the administration. In fact, the Alliance for Change AFC had called for Nazir's resignation last year after the deadline for the 2020 report was near, and from all indications, it was nowhere near complete. Reporting for HGB Nightly News, Shamar Allen.
Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister, the Honorable Gaston Brown, is seeking to tap resources from the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, but is cautious of new loans. Ursel Charles Jr. reports.
Prime Minister Gaston Brown, alongside members of his cabinet, met with the bank's president, Benedict Okechukwu Orama, and OECS Secretary General Dr. Didacus Jules, among other executives. Speaking ahead of the meeting, Prime Minister Brown says this country is intent on advancing its developmental agenda.
I believe there will be some opportunities, and you can be assured when it comes to exploiting opportunities, our government is perhaps among the most effective within the region, and we will, as we meet with them today, determine exactly how we move forward.
There is a loan facility with the bank. However, the Prime Minister says his administration is wary of entering any further debt arrangements.
We are more interested in equity investments instead of loans because we are relatively highly leveraged, and our interest would be to look at the investors who they will bring to the table. And if they can fund these private investments, then certainly we will participate. But in terms of the government itself borrowing, we'll be a little reluctant to take on any more debt at this time.
The bank had initially made available $1.5 billion financing to CARICOM territories in September last year. Education Minister Darrell Matthew had then signed the initial agreement on the sidelines of the Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum. For ABS News, I am Ursel Charles Jr.
Internationally, a 16-year-old pupil stabbed a Spanish-language teacher to death at a Roman Catholic high school in the high-end beach resort town of Saint-Jean-de-Luz in southwestern France. More in this Reuters report.
A teacher has been stabbed to death by a student in the French town of Saint-Jean-de-Luz. Officials say the victim was a Spanish-language teacher. The 16-year-old attacker told another teacher he was possessed and heard voices instructing him to carry out the attack, a source with knowledge of the investigation told Reuters. Pape Ndiaye is France's education minister.
Nothing allowed to foresee such a horrendous event. The principal, as well as the professors, all told me that this establishment was a very calm one, known for its seriousness and the serenity of its educational environment.
A local newspaper reported that the student stood up in class and walked to the door before turning around and stabbing the teacher, citing 2 students who witnessed the attack. A local prosecutor said the student was being held in custody and that a murder investigation is underway.
Several supermarket chains in the UK have begun to ration some fruit and vegetables as a result of disruption to the supply chain. Severe weather has hit harvests in Spain and North Africa. Al Jazeera's Sonia Gallego reports.
No tomatoes for sale here, or blueberries. And the dwindling options of fresh produce in this supermarket have not been missed by regular shoppers.
We'll have to use some tins, won't we? Tin veg. We'll have to make do with them for now until it comes back, eh?
Sometimes you go to the shop, there won't be anything on the shelf.
And where there's availability, you'll likely be paying a premium, especially for out-of-season produce.
The supermarkets affected have said that these shortages are only meant to last for another few weeks. But there are bigger questions as to what's behind these supply issues, mainly from which countries these supplies are coming from and what are the climate issues that have been affecting them.
2022 was the second hottest year on record in Europe. Heat waves and extreme temperature in one of Europe's biggest food producers, Spain, have meant fewer available crops to harvest. The giant gas-heated greenhouses that grow fresh produce in countries such as the Netherlands have been affected by the huge rise in energy prices caused by the war in Ukraine.
As climate change begins to bite, we will see these impacts on the UK's food supplies, but also on the UK's hard-pressed farmers who are already paying hundreds of millions of pounds extra for fertilisers and for energy because of the price of gas, and who are also seeing themselves exposed to the impacts of climate change like last year's drought.
And the UK faces one other particular issue. Most of the country's fruit and vegetables come from the European Union, and Britain's exit from the bloc has meant extra costs and bureaucracy has added to the strain, especially for perishable goods. The solution, food-producing organisations say, is the government to give farmers more support, such as replacing high-carbon fertilisers with low-carbon alternatives, and focusing on ways to protect farms against the extremes in weather that have become the new normal. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera, London.
And now for the weather. Present weather is cloudy skies with slight haze. The temperature for today is 28 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds are a moderate breeze of 15 miles per hour from the northeast. Seas are moderate with waves of 4 to 5 feet. The weather forecast in St. Kitts and Nevis today will be generally partly sunny with a 40% or moderate chance of a brief shower. Tonight will be partly cloudy with a 60% or moderate chance of a brief shower. Sunset today will be at 6:16 p.m., sunrise tomorrow at 6:32 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jason Davis.